Shirley here with Sirius Talis Moon, and I kind of feel there's something here that reminds me of the time that I was traveling and I was taking all of my books with me. And it was really funny because we flew, we did not have a lot of money, but we weren't even flying. We were taking a cruise ship, which was kind of like a passenger ship, and we had these huge bags where all my books were there. And then I was studying while traveling. And sometimes when we were traveling by car, now it's impossible with all the natural disasters and wars, but we were traveling by car, and sometimes we would stop next to a parking to rest a little. And from the light that was coming from the street light, I would open my chemistry book and look into that and read. And this was so exciting for me that when I came 6 months later, I had the best grades in my class. Unsurprisingly, because I had the best conditions to study. I was traveling, which is the ninth house, that for me also indirectly rules the fourth house, which is elementary, but that was high school. And I was traveling and and reading the books that I was anyway excited about without any distraction, without bullies, without any, just and that was such a clear slate for me. At that time I was also beginning my screenwriting journey, and my mother began to write her first book. I think it was either her first or her second. And those are just some good memories because it was a very Saturnian placement for me. And this is where I just began to write. The building of a screenplay is so beautiful. Because it's very structured. However, it's like building a building. I don't know how to describe that. It's like building an actual building until you have the storyline and everything that fits. And it was such a joyous labor. And I was meticulous. And I remember I was doing that with the origin of I was an X File with the PH, and I was writing X File screenplays, and then the trajectory would move from you know writing other type of screenplays. So developing the skill of screenplay writing. Neptune was in my 12th house probably by then, and very likely Saturn would be going through my second or first. I don't know. Yes, Saturn was where it's now. That's that 1996 7. And yes, I was in Europe back then. I wasn't at the White March, um, but this is. And then in 2007, when was the Madeleine thingy, and then in 2021 is when I was alone. Um, but here's the thing: I received certain energy, and this went along the lines of if in a person that has poverty is allowed to traffic them, then people don't want to work. And it came about in also women context, um, as where if this family or wealth lineage would sacrifice the daughters that were not beautiful enough, or would traffic the daughters that were not meticulous enough to build a business, and would use that as if kind of like we'll throw you to the gulag if you don't. Now, to some people, maybe that created a run for your life type of thing. To other people, and this is the thread that I'm reading right now, that created a situation where they were like in a strike, but it was not a volitional strike. It's kind of like they couldn't do the meticulous work of running a business because what was missing is for people to not be trafficked even if they don't have this ability. And this was preventing from someone to grow their business or even connect with the wealth family and wealth lineage to to invest in their business, because they had to tend to abolishing human trafficking and any type of ritual abuse first, whether it's indigenous, traditional, elite, or whatnot. There is also awareness that it's kind of like a Gen Z awareness that um, there is a balance between the Saturnian path of to dedicate, to sacrifice, to this, to that, and uh, the rest that is required for something to grow, and to flip the dice to make a decision. For example, I decided on my degree almost in a flip of a dice, because I did not know what to study and I studied many topics, and then I just decided to have a degree in something. It also seemed like something is evolving business wise. When I did my first moon cancer with Venus or Venupiter, something like that talisman, I'm not sure if Jupiter was even there yet, but it was obvious to me that this is something that is bigger, is something that is bigger than, and to me it seemed even illogical, because it's not that I wasn't aware of the significance of the talismans that I'm making with the bisextile, for example, or with prospective Sedna talisman, or even Aries talisman that is I almost ran out of Aries honey that I did with Dana Balgadi. Um, and there were many other plans. But when I created the Talismans of the Moon, big ideas came about, and I learned about many things. So, and there is something that requires something bigger that's coming to the surface. Um, I definitely need to do Sedna Talisman. But there's something. Ooh, I feel that there are going to be. I'm gonna need to do new talismans of new bodies of skies that we haven't recognized yet, and maybe study them through that. I don't know. New planets are about to be discovered. I don't know when. In the coming century, okay? It's not. I don't have like a trajectory for when. In the coming century, and I feel like I need to be doing the talismans of those new planets, but in the coming century. Aries in Taurus is coming in the 50s. My housing has a lot to do with that. Because my housing would have to adapt to it's like to adapt to a new baby. So people need to have the house that's compatible for the talismans. And it was also in the last talisman I did, it was very clear to me that I would need to either something would need to be happening with those talismans. In the sense that it's kind of like there would not be enough place for the talismans. It's both enlarging the space and the talismans, and there's a currency around the talismans that needs to be pure. Because this is the true knowledge. It's not the rape gates, not the pedo rings, not the, okay? And this is also about this thread of, it was kind of like there was an investor, and there was this thing where somebody, and it comes to the trajectory of somebody would be trafficked if they would be seen as an option, and that being trajectory for people to be beautiful for their life and for them to live. And it's kind of like, well, in those life one might even decide that they don't want to live. And one's soul, my soul, I know, is meant to do the talismans of the planets that are to be discovered in the coming century. And this is beyond religion. It's connecting with the thread of my soul that is so innate. I don't know why. Of course I need to do Uranus in Gemini. Neptune in Aries already did, Pluto in Aquarius already did. I will need to do again, of course, more talismans and so on. But I see the talismans of the new planets that are to be discovered this century. And there's something very clear in me. It's the energy of air, and it's an energy of it's an energy that I embody. I saw this energy also when I began to work with crystals. And I mean energy crystals, okay? For the drug dealers of you, no need to flood my DMs, not interested in collabos. I meant energy crystals. No, because the last time I said that, I talked something about Luisa looking like weed, and there was a weed drug dealer that was all in my DM, and I'm like, no offense, but I just, I like essential oils. What can I do? What kan ik bedoen? Um, and this is an energy that I embody. It is also connected with the crystals and the rocks. It was also connected to a counterpart or divine counterpart. And somebody either tried to imitate that energy or had a thread of that energy and other thread of other energy. Like, I don't know. Not discrediting anyone. But this energy is also me. And here I see this energy as me, energy that I embody. And it's the planets that will be discovered in the coming century. It is not, I know it's becoming a personal vlog, but for those that want to stay for this personal vlog, I have Uranus in the 10th house, and now going through my Uranus opposition in the coming 7 years. Uranus will be in air sign, and it will go through my 4th house. While I have my Rahu maturation, okay, which is Uranus opposition, makes sense. And that means that I'm purging astrology as a teaching and creating astrology as a craft, but my very housing is to do with that, and it's a new type of astrology. Not only Sedna. And this is astrology as a craft. And I saw particularly when I did moon talismans, okay, to do like body butters and stuff like that, I learned aromatherapy, and then I learned how to do body butters. At first I really wasn't like inspired. I thought I'd never do that. I like the essential oils where people smell them and have this insight or this mantra or this. I really like the spiritual part of things, of matter. However, um, and and this is where Caitlin Kopak that turned talismans into body butters and honey, because she was working on the Terramundi, which is a blend of what I call a fuga, which is inspired by Bach. And Douglas Hofstadter that did the fuga structure of Bach. One of my essays was inspired by the fuga structure. There's something incredibly neurodivergent about that, I know. However, there is an awareness. And when I did my own moon body butter, I saw that there was something. I began to be extremely sensitive to the day and night charts, and I felt like there were missing talismans for me in the house of Kapok. Now, it's not about that being a truth. It was about me finding my own personification and unique creation that was diverging from kind of like the mother egg in that sense, because that was meant to do me. It's a union of ideas, but each person, when they create, they have their own creation. I'll just say that, you know. This is the difference between Omanut and Umanut, okay? Omanut, art, and Umanut, which is kind of craftsmanship. Craftsmanship can be both about replicas and art is one's own original, and it can be adaptation, but it's one's own original. The adaptation is a creation in itself. It acknowledges the inspiration, but it's a creation in itself. And those that are meant to do those things, they will see it and they will like, oh wait, when I do, I don't know, the Tema Mundi, I need to add another talisman into the mix. It's kind of, now it would be very offensive for people. I also do it in my own talismans, okay? So it would be very offensive for the people like, this is sacred, this is just, wait a second. It's a conglomerate of things that work differently with different people. For me, it needs to adjust so that I will receive the benefits and mitigate the challenges. And oh, I'm a night chart. And oh, wait, Saturn in Capricorn would be opposing my moon. So I would have to do some different blend. I would have to build a different world. And it's a process of original creation that is not uninspired, but there is something different that is birthing with that one. And without it, one would feel disincluded. This is why, since the beginning, it was very. Gen Z came to me like something so natural. It's like the dream and every vision that I had, they were like the fruition of that. When I envisioned the company and how company would be with every person having their own brand into that, and you think about it really, 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 the people that like own the world, they have a lot of daughter companies that are all branded. Except that I was thinking of something like that without the slavery, like that the equity is actually equity. And I kind of think people noticed that before I did. And that threatened their own enslaving humanity trajectory. Over nothing. Okay, they were just unused to the unclenched fist that would bring them actual abundance. And they're not to be blamed so much because they went through so much trauma, and people that went through a lot of trauma, either they bring in timelines, but when it comes to relation, and it's not something that's completely unfamiliar to me, but it's also not on those levels, and this is where there would be a challenge to conceive even because of that. And I mean not necessarily children, because conception is reception to idea and fruition and joy. And that would create a friction with the it's about being receptive to a low frequency. But these people need to be like, either they need to go like Terence McKenna on love, in the sense that when something gives a love buffer, and I'm not talking about people here, but plant teachers, when the plant teacher gives kind of like a love buffer, they need to take enough dosage of it to have the love buffer so that they wouldn't have like the side effects of malefic things, so that they have the love buffer supported. This is why sometimes people that have near-death experiences, because it's only then that they access that love buffer. I'm sorry, but when I was psychically tortured, there was a time where I experienced certain. I went into even somebody's death, because every time I received things from there, and there was a certain video that I was watching, and it wasn't showing the death or anything, but I would receive really energies that are so loving that I became almost addicted to that. And then even the beings around me, even those that tortured me psychically, they saw me and they're like, usually people need like this experience, and this changes their entire life, but this was not even changing a fragment for me. And it may be the case that some of them even saw the extent of what they were doing at that time. Of how much harm they were causing. Which would confront them with the fact that that much harm was caused to them. So there is something where the okay, just as Gen Zers wouldn't work in a way where they couldn't develop their own ideas in their own branding, in their own business. It's something along these lines where if they traffic someone, then it's not that they can say, here, if you don't be that good, then we will traffic you. If you don't go, if you're not good enough, then you go to the gulag or something like that. And it doesn't achieve the result that people wanted it to achieve. And it creates a situation where one is not even able to do anything in any trajectory. And there was even around the beauty that it's coming around as women, but it can also be other genders, that even certain women would not develop their beauty so much because they weren't allowed to be women in that society. Because that society could either see women as trafficked in marriage or trafficked outside of marriage. And any world that thinks that it's okay to enslave people is ruining the egg in its own creation. This is what I got for United States, that it's going to collapse into itself. It's like the egg is crushed with the baby because, oh gosh, because they thought to birth a baby on enslaving people or trafficking people and to consolidate wealth with raping infants and children. It can be that the creators didn't even know to the extent of what was happening. And here's it connects with the fact that people are trying to read the myth and see how the myth evolves. But it's we never had this. None alive ever witnessed the transits that we are witnessing today, and there is no recorded history, and people cannot have the prophecy when they don't practice sexual sovereignty, and or they cannot be the 1% that practice the Kundalini rise. You know what I mean? The topic of yin science came about when I was in academia, and actually before I wrote my thesis proposal. Before I wrote that, I was thinking to talk about yin science, and I saw the world wars as an aligning of yang and yin. And indeed, after the world wars, women were able to vote, but it's not the same world wars. It's a bigger alignment. This is why the egg is coming right now. It's a bigger alignment, and the lotus is not what people think that it is. Oh my God. They only see things, oh God, they're trying to build Egypt, and it's not the same Egypt. They're not to blame, okay? They try to build it with the conception that they have. They're like Egypt, pyramids, Egypt, sacrificing cats to cat goddess, Egypt, Ma'at, Egypt, enslaving people, Egypt, enslaving the Israelites, Egypt. No, Falcon, it's not. There is a reason if it's new Egypt, there is a reason that this Egypt is new. But this is the thing, they're not to blame for that. Okay, they're not to blame. They're just trying to go into. They're trying to go back to the future, which is, by the way, the name of my thesis. Back to the future, the body-mind question in epistemic eyes. 444 as I speak. Cohesion, Jupiter, the benevolent, will never be without the union. Venus, here is the Jupiter Venus. Where's my Jupiter Venus? Where is my Jupiter Venus? Because I captured the Jupiter Venus. It was a very challenging energy because it was next to Kronos and Hades and Jupiter Venus and the lotus and orange and rose stuffed into a body butter which I mixed with a fork. And yes, has 8.45 Oz, which is absolutely not commercial. Ooh. Once in 84 years. I mean, it's shea butter. It's not going to hold 84 years. 80 something years. It's not Uranus cycle. It was something around that 90 years, 70, I don't remember. Okay, some more. Because the Jupiter Venus is with Sirius, the bigger sun. We're not going to have cohesion without union, and union can only be tantric because of what the wata. Falcon, that lotus is not about sacred hoards and human trafficking and all that Masonic dumbfuckery. Speaking as Dutch person, okay? And if you're like, but wait a second, your bloodline, come on. I remember when I said these noses and that nationality, only to find out it would be the children, the Esau's children. It's kind of like, well, it's still this. Okay. You see how secular and contemporary I am? But it's from within being so fully immersed in the present that the gnosis is preceding the gnosis of the rape trajectories. Now, I get in the context of rape trajectories, there would be the mythification of even people who do talismans. For example, Gracia Tasio, way more sacred than me. When she does that, when I do talisman, everybody around me knows that there's going to be that election, and they see that I'm going to do this talisman. I am the last to know, okay? When I did Uranus talisman, those who watch my Spirit of Matter channel, it's kind of like, wait a second, is Uranus? Oh, we have a talisman election. Okay, let's take something. And this is completely not the tradition. People would fast for 2 weeks, prepare and meditate for months ahead to purify themselves to do the talismans. Okay? But because we are living in the time where people are exiled and people are refugees and people are this and people are that, I am learning to do talismans on the spot, which is when I did my moon Jupiter talisman, Jupiter Procyon talisman. It was like a traveling talisman with something that it's kind of like, during wartime. And, I just think about when I would travel with my mom, then we would be traveling around September, which is the Jewish New Year. And we would cut salad on the vehicle, it's kind of like on the vehicle. There's the front of the vehicle, and then we would cut a salad and have like the apple with honey, and that would be our New Year. It would also grow to be my favorite holiday because the food is healthy. That and Passover because the food is healthy, and I guess the connotation was, of course, it's the time where we cut salad on the front of the car and eat it with, some apple, and then there would be Yom Kippur with Mama would fast, and the Shinken would be eaten by the dogs in the back seat. And we'd go feed some swans, because that's how you celebrate the new year. Now, we did not have a lot of money. We're not a rich family by any means, okay? We would park in like a parking lot between cars and find a very hidden way to pee. But we would travel. And this is how I became well traveled. Fort Orion is very difficult. But those are days and memories that are cherished. I'm not going to say that it wasn't difficult. I'm not going to say that, okay, that I wasn't thinking to unalive myself every now and then. But I definitely cherish the memory. I was like, hey, anyway, I would think to, I mean, I grew up in Israel. Like, anyway, I would think to unalive myself. At least I got to see the world. See, my sun in Venus in Taurus, but I'm really peaceful, loving, and kind. But oh my Mars, at least just the last decan of Scorpio, which is like the fairest. It's not vengeful. It's not, at least not with my energy. It's kind of like, what is the change underneath? If like What would be underneath vengeance? What is the desired change to bring to the world? And on that I will act. Now it's 22, so it's like anything that need to die so that I can live. Oh, there is a cat that we call Intifada. She makes an intifada in the house. My mother returned to knit because she ruined all the dolls. There were social engineers that were laughing. They were here. Here's the thing: they were spying on our house, so they were invading our house, and then they saw my mother knitting the dolls. So they call it the doll house. Anyway, the cat that made a revolution is called Intifada, and Intifada is coming to eat. Um, it's one of those black cats that are so. Every cat has such a distinct personality, and she's so adorable. She's such a good troublemaker. She creates so much trouble that you will fall in love with her. So here's what I'm seeing. People will not be able to create cohesion or cohesive birthing of something, be it New Egypt or whatever, without a union that brings the water. And to be favored by Sirius is not Procyon. Okay, slavery got to go. Femicide got to go. Racism got to go. What happened in Egypt? Moses was born in Egypt. Okay, he picked between two sides of diamonds. The burning coal, which we know is a diamond, and the refined jewelry. And he picked the burning coal and had a speech impairment. Because it was important for the child to not see, it was important that they wouldn't see that he is a prophet so that he wouldn't be thrown into the Nile, because he was saved from the Nile. And then Mariam, what was the role of Mariam? The role of Mariam was to abolish human trafficking and child trade. And essentially Moses would bring in the prophecy of abolishing and coming out of slavery by undoing the curses that were done to enslave the people. Those people that were enslaved to build the pyramids, okay, eventually they received the 6ix9ine sovereignty. And they had the Nile parting for them to walk in the desert, to be purified, to build a new land. And in that trajectory, they had to stop worship the Baal. I'm going to, let's read in the Bible for you again. They had to stop worship the Baal. They had to stop human sacrifice, bloodletting, any rape and rituals in order to reach the promised land. I'm going to say it again. They had to stop worship the Baal and do all of these bloodletting, child sacrificing, rape rituals in order to reach the promised land. What is the promised land but an actual orgasm that brings in the water? It doesn't happen when there is rape. It doesn't happen when there is trafficking. It doesn't happen with bloodletting rituals. It doesn't happen with children. It happens only when, and this is when the water is not peace, okay? It's not about, losing, it's not about trauma that there can be peace fluid coming out and even poop because it's trauma, right? What was the role of Mariam? To abolish human trafficking. Okay, let's look at Mariam. And I know Hebrew, so I would look at in Hebrew. So those that want to be like Egyptian gods, they better not sacrifice cats. Because, like, they have to look at Africa. Who are the people that sustain in Africa? Is the people that abolish child trafficking, child weddings, and so on and so forth. They use hibiscus tea instead of blood rituals for the deities that they used to. They didn't change the deities, they just stopped sacrificing human blood and started use something like hibiscus tea, which I talked about so much in 7 October. And it was a male African healer and shaman that I learned this from. I don't remember what the video. So the teachings came from this area. They came from where would be New Egypt. Now Miriam was from Levi, the sister of Aaron and Moses, and she was a woman prophetess. You know, when there is woman prophetess, then there would be abolition of slavery and human trafficking. It's a very prospective time because she would mark the return from exile. Okay? Egypt was an exile into slavery that happened because of human trafficking and usury in Israel and Judah. And Mariam symbolized the end of human trafficking. Now, for those that want to settle in New Egypt, their need is not of Mariam and Moses, because they try to get to the egg meats of creation for the Egyptians. But here is the thing: if they enslave, they will perish. They will be cursed, and they should know that the other peoples are getting the meat of the liberation from slavery already. They are already giving the courses before United States is even coming to New Egypt. And I know because they tried for me to partake in those rituals, and I said no. We must abolish human trafficking, abolish usury, and abolish slavery within Jewish society. Only then we can go out of slavery. There's no use to recreate the meat of the 12 courses without abolish any type of ritual abuse. What happened to the Israelites? They traveled in the desert. And I'm like, what are people in Israel, the promised land, so to speak, doing the curses of blood, the curses of this, the curses of that. To what country are they going? If slavery is, if this is Egypt, where is the promised land? So the Miriam would take the she would take kind of like a darbuka or something. There's a Miriam, there's Tov Miriam, which is actually a musical instrument, and all the ladies would go after her, okay, with this Tov Miriam, with this music, making music and dancing, okay. Now this is, this is Jewish tradition, so you can imagine how prominent she was. She was born in ancient Egypt. Miriam is loved. Um, and she was also rebellious towards Egypt. So Mary is married is rebellion. She was resisting the murder of the sons of Pharaoh and kept Moses in its own. Okay, kept Moses is secluded. They were supposed to discard Moses. They were supposed to discard the children, and then there was a decision to divorce the women so that they wouldn't have children. And the daughter Mariam said that we are working for no reason, kind of like Gen Z. And everybody divorced their spouses, and she said, "Daddy, your dictation or request is more difficult even because Pharaoh did not say but the sons, okay? And you said both the sons and the daughters. So then they returned their wife, they didn't divorce, and everybody remarried. She knew that her mother will have a son that will save Israel, and everybody were saying her that her prophecy is done. So because they were supposed to throw that son into the Nile, the father said, "My daughter, where are your prophets?" But she guarded Moses in the Nile while sailing in the Nile. So the daughter of Pharaoh picks him up, and basically this would be the test for Moses to see that he is stupid enough to be kept in. And she was considered a woman that was a birth doula. And her role in the Exodus from Egypt is basically the women singing to God and dancing. And here is how the Jews came out of slavery. The women sang and led. The women were singing and dancing, okay? Not trafficked and violated. And this is how the Jews came out of slavery. Now they want to do the 12, do the courses, but keep people in human trafficking. That is not a way to get out of slavery. That's a way of trying to be Egypt, only to be cursed and have all the workforce exiling away into liberty and fall as an empire, because the workforce would be gone to build their own promised land. And this workforce will be liberated when the women would sing. The courses are only active when the women are singing and dancing. Only when there is a free woman in the people. They were exiled because of usury. They were trying to traffic women, sell the daughters, and then the Jews were exiled. It was the end of all kingdoms in Judah and Israel. And then, when the women were singing, they came out of exile. Now, for the Egyptians, their trouble was trying to enslave people to build pyramids to have New Egypt. That egg can only hatch in an orgasmic birth, not a trafficking birth, not a ritual abuse birth, not a programmed birth. And here's the thing, with Mariam, also the women would see the face of divinity. And she was, a woman was equal to her, to the male prophet, not to Moses, okay, because Moses um, would be seen as later leading the trajectory. Because Moses would be given the prophecy of people had to be purified and both believe in the promised land, but also abolish any type of child trafficking, sacrifice, usury, okay, worshiping the Mammon, worshiping the Baal. And this is why Moses' role was even bigger than Mariam, because a man that abolishes child sacrifice, his role is even bigger than a woman that encourages women to sing. Okay, and it's obvious why, because who raped the women? The children that were sacrificed and worshipping Baal. And this is why something that also I saw, even, woman liberation and the voice and so on is very important, but the feminine was subjugated in the secret societies that were boys raping boys. And it is there where abolishing that preceded the rape of women, and so abolishing that not precedes feminism, but actually is preceding over supposed feminism, because for women because feminism is kind of like, how do we say it in mathematics, nigzeret? It's a derivative, okay? Feminism is a derivative of the liberation from ritual abuse. Okay, when we abolish rape, then of course also women are not raped. When the common people had the right to vote, oh my God, also women have the right to vote. Also colored women have the right to vote. Well, what can we do? They had to give the right to vote also to colored